This is a total game changer if you don't have a track saw or the budget for a high-end track saw and need to make long, straight, accurate cuts. I'm impressed with this one, y'all. Let me show you. I purchased this Milescraft Track Saw guide myself with my money. These are my thoughts and my opinions. If you'd like to check them out for yourself, link in the description and the pinned comments. Let's go. First thing you want to do is put these tracks together, and these are two 27.5-inch tracks, much like the Ryobi track saw. I think that the companies are doing these shorter tracks for shipping and packaging. You can get all that stuff in one small package. That way it ships easier. Now, if you want to cut anything longer than, say, a 4-foot cut across a sheet of plywood, so you're going to cut the length of the plywood, you'll need to pick up an extra pack. However, it's still much cheaper to do that versus buying a track saw. The first thing I noticed when I unboxed these is that they include end caps on their tracks. Nobody else is doing that. Festool's not, Milwaukee didn't, Ryobi didn't, Craig didn't. I've yet to see anybody include those track guards on the end. That's pretty awesome because that'll tear your hoses and cords and things like that up. So I'm glad that they included those. So when you connect them, you're just going to take those two ends that are going together, take those caps off. Now you can certainly just use one of these small tracks if you just want to cut small parts. In other words, across a 2x6 or a 2x8 or anything like that. A lot of people like these shorter tracks. They did include some track connectors that you use to connect these tracks together. They're just going to slide in those slots. Now there is a little place side to side there, so you're going to want to make sure to get these lined up before you tighten them down. I like to use a straight edge. You could use a 4-foot level, anything like that. That's one of the reasons I like having a precision straight edge in the shop, stuff just like this. You also want to make sure you're on a flat surface when you're connecting these up. Perfectly flush there. That's what we wanted. Track lines up perfectly. So far, so good. Now to get this saw trolley, I don't know what they're going to call this, but this red piece that goes on the track, to get the saw ready to go on there, you want to get that set on the track. It comes with 4 cams, basically, that's going to twist and lock that in place. So you want to tighten those up so that there's no play on there, but it's snug, but not too snug that it's not going to glide smoothly, just like if you were adjusting a track saw to a track. I like that they did this. As you can see, this saw guide will fit a multitude of different circular saws. Almost all of them should fit on this saw guide. It also comes with a blade spacer. This is going to make sure that you're setting the blade distance on this track perfectly every time, no matter what saw you're using. And it sets inside this, so you know you're going to lock it in there. And then you're just going to set your circular saw up there and lock it in place. These slide to adjust. You're pressing the blade up against that spacer. It's going to leave a small space there. That way it's accurate when you put it on the track. Now we'll tighten these down and lock it in place. Now you got 4 clamps that clamp your circular saw into place. It's going to hold it flat against that plate. In other words, you're going to be able to get a good 90-degree cut because it's sitting flat on this guide rail. After you get that cinched down on there, it's ready to rock. One thing to consider is battery size. I noticed my 4-amp-hour batteries were rubbing that post on the thumb screw. I will likely trim that off, but 2-amp-hour, 3-amp-hour batteries will fit just fine. Just something to consider. And that post you can't move, so I wish they would have considered that when they made this. Everything can't be perfect. I will say at full depth that these batteries get in the way, but if you're cutting 3/4 plywood, anything where you raise your saw up, depending on how the battery attaches to your saw, on this rigid, it is not in the way. As you can see, there's plenty of room there to use that 4-amp-hour battery. Now, if your saw doesn't have batteries that attach to the back, if it goes to the side, this won't even be an issue for you. Now, just like any other track saw track, you're going to have to cut the splinter guard to fit or match your saw, which once you cut that, it should match any saw because of the saw blade spacer that they provide, because it's putting it in the exact right spot every time. At least that's the theory. Now, one of the main reasons you want a track saw is to cut straight, but also to cut square. That way, if you're cutting thicker woods like this 2-inch chunk of walnut, we can make sure that we get a good square cut on this. And we did get a good square cut with that circular saw using the track. So I was actually quite impressed with that. At this thickness, the quality of your circular saw is going to matter here. If you've got a less quality circular saw that flexes a lot on that base, then it may cause you some trouble. But if you got a good solid circular saw, you'll be able to get nice square cuts with that. And that full-size 7¼ circular saw will cut through a 2-inch block of walnut. So you got plenty of depth there to cut most anything using this Milescraft system.
I'm in the system.
The way this rides on the track is fairly interesting to me. I got the battery out so we don't cut our hand off here. But you can see it rides on that single lip that's popped up off of that track. This is a proprietary track, big word for redneck. Or in other words, you can't use your current track saw on this track or use any other items with this track. But you can see that it rides on that, basically a piece of plastic there, and it rides down that lip. That makes sure it stays on track, just like a train riding on the tracks. These tension bearings here, you just tighten those up, and that keeps it from moving side to side, so you get a nice square cut that doesn't move on you. One thing you can't do is bevel at this current setting, because when I start beveling, it just moves everything off. So if you went all the way over and tried to cut riding on that same track, you would absolutely cut that track. It will not cut at a bevel using this circular saw on this track. So this is a 90-degree cut only. For about $100 for this kit with 2 tracks, this thing is an absolute steal if you don't have a table saw, or if you do have a table saw and you just break down a bunch of sheet goods, this is the perfect tool for you if you already have a circular saw. This is one of the best saw guides that I've ever used, and I've used a few of them before with the Craig system. They're plastic, they work pretty good, but this is really solid. Now, this is not perfect, and it is absolutely not a replacement for a track saw, and I'll tell you why. Number one, a track saw will allow you to bevel no matter what, and this, when you bevel, it will hit that track with this saw. I don't know how other saws will work, but I think that's going to be a problem for a lot of people if you need to cut 45s or bevels, anything like that. Also, there's no plunge feature like a plunge saw, track saw will plunge easily. This, you could do it, but it would make it a little sketchy and might cause a kickback, and that's another thing you're losing here is there's no anti-kickback anything on here. Another drawback is dust collection. A track saw has much better dust collection. Even some of the lower end track saws are better than a circular saw, so you will be giving that up if you pick this over a track saw. During the initial setup process, I said that I really liked how these had the included end caps there. They pop off too easy. In other words, when the saw gets to the end of the track, it'll actually push them off. Even though they're flush-ish, it kind of pushes them away and dislodges them. I wish they were tighter in there. There's no way to tighten them up just by the way they're made with these little clips. It's a nicety to have, but it's not well implemented. You'll likely lose those and or chunk them. Like we said earlier, this is a game changer for those who need a solid system to rip down sheet goods. I can't recommend this enough. If you have about $100 to invest in something like this, this is one of the most solid systems I've seen on the market. I am very impressed with this. The tracks go together well. Everything just works. Pretty good job. It's by far not perfect, as I stated before, but it is extremely well made and will do what you want it to do as far as making straight, square cuts. I give this a 4 out of 5 fist bumps, and I don't give that lightly. I think a lot of you will benefit from picking one of these up if you are in a small shop, you don't have a track saw, you don't have a table saw. This is a good alternative with some limitations. If you like this video, you're gonna love the Milwaukee track saw video I just made. Click at that box, get you the big old virtual fist bump. Also, another one of my favorite videos right there.